I'm 79 years old, and last Tuesday I realized I've been disappearing for decades. Not dying, disappearing. There's a difference, and it's the kind of difference that empties out a life from the inside while everyone watching thinks you're still there. My name is Richard. I worked for 43 years as a quality control supervisor at a pharmaceutical plant outside Detroit. Married young, 22, had two daughters before I turned 26. Susan and I bought a house with a mortgage that felt like it would outlive us both. I was responsible, showed up, paid the bills on time, never missed a day of work unless someone was in the hospital. From the outside, I probably looked fine, stable, one of those men who keeps the machinery of ordinary life running. But here's what nobody tells you about being responsible. It can become a place to hide. You can spend 50 years doing the right things while slowly erasing yourself, and everyone will call you dependable instead of asking why you're so quiet at dinner, why you don't laugh anymore, why your eyes go somewhere else when people are talking. I learned early that feelings were expensive. Time off was expensive. Needs were expensive. So I learned to be low maintenance, undemanding. I became someone who could be counted on because I stopped counting on anything for myself. And for a long time, I thought that was noble. I thought that's what men did. We carried things and we didn't complain about the weight. The mistake wasn't dramatic. There was no affair, no bankruptcy, no crime. The mistake was simpler and slower than that. I made myself smaller and smaller until I could fit into the margins of everyone else's life without taking up any space of my own. I remember the first time I swallowed something I wanted to say. I was 24. Susan wanted to move closer to her parents. I didn't. I'd just started to make friends at the plant, had a Sunday basketball game I looked forward to, but she was homesick and her mother had just been diagnosed with something, and it felt selfish to say no. So I said yes, and we moved. Then I wanted to take a ceramics class. Susan thought it was strange. Why ceramics? What would I do with that? And she was right, it was impractical, so I let it go. I wanted to visit my brother in Oregon. The timing wasn't good. We couldn't afford it. The girls needed things, so I didn't go. He died 4 years later. I never saw where he lived. Small things, reasonable sacrifices, the kind everyone makes when they have a family and responsibilities, except I never stopped making them. Every year, I found new reasons why what I wanted didn't matter as much as what was needed. And the terrible thing is, Susan never asked me to do this. She would have said yes sometimes. She would have made room, but I never asked. I just quietly removed myself from consideration. I stopped having opinions about where to eat, what to watch, how to spend weekends. I'd say whatever you want so often that eventually people stopped asking. I became a background character in my own life, present but not participating, there but not really there. Work became my hiding place. I volunteered for extra shifts, took on projects nobody wanted, stayed late, came in early, because at work I knew what I was supposed to do. There were clear expectations and outcomes. At home, I'd forgotten what I liked, what I wanted, who I was underneath all the duty. The years stacked up. The girls grew. Susan built a life, friends, book clubs, a job she loved at the library. She invited me in. She really did. But I'd gotten so good at being absent that I didn't know how to be present anymore. I'd stand in the kitchen while everyone talked and laughed, and I'd feel like I was watching through glass. Separate, safe, alone. Susan left me when I was 68. She cried when she told me. She said she felt like she'd been married to a ghost for 20 years. She said she'd tried everything, therapy, date nights, long talks in the dark where she begged me to tell her what I was feeling, and I'd say I was fine because I was fine. Fine is what you say when you've forgotten how to feel anything else. She said she loved me but couldn't keep loving someone who wasn't there. And the worst part, the part that still sits like a stone in my chest, is that I couldn't even argue with her. Because she was right. I'd been gone for decades. I just never left the house. My daughters called after the separation, both of them, careful, uncomfortable calls where they tried to understand what happened. I could hear them searching for an explanation that made sense. Was Dad depressed? Was there someone else? Was Mom difficult? No, none of that. I was just not there. And they'd known it too. They told me stories I'd forgotten, times they'd tried to show me things, drawings, report cards, their first apartments, and I'd nodded without really looking, smiled without really seeing them. I was physically present at graduations, birthdays, holidays, but I might as well have sent a cardboard cutout. My youngest, Rachel, said something I can't unhear. She said, "Dad, I spent my whole childhood trying to figure out how to make you show up. I thought if I was good enough, or funny enough, or needed you badly enough, you'd finally be here with us, but you never were. And at some point, I stopped trying." That broke something in me that was already cracked, because I did love them. I loved them so much it hurt, but I'd love them from a distance, like loving something through a window, close enough to see, too far away to touch. The loneliness didn't start after Susan left. That's what I had to admit to myself. The loneliness had been there all along. I'd been lonely in my marriage, lonely at family dinners, lonely in a house full of people who cared about me, because I'd made myself unreachable. I'd built a wall between myself and everyone else and called it strength, called it sacrifice, called it being a good provider. But all I'd really done was starve. I starved myself of connection, of joy, of the vulnerability that makes life feel alive. And I starved the people who loved me of the chance to actually know me. The turning point came 6 months after Susan moved out. I was alone in the house for Thanksgiving. The girls invited me, both of them did, but I said I was fine. There's that word again, fine. I made a turkey sandwich and sat at the kitchen table. The house was silent except for the furnace clicking on and off. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed, really laughed. Couldn't remember the last time I'd wanted something enough to ask for it. Couldn't remember the last time I'd told someone a story about myself that wasn't related to work. I sat there for hours, trying to think of something I liked, something I wanted, and I came up empty. Not because I was depressed, though maybe I was, but because I'd spent so many years erasing my preferences, my needs, myself, that I'd actually succeeded. I'd disappeared. Mission accomplished. I started crying, which I hadn't done in maybe 30 years. And once I started, I couldn't stop. I cried for the ceramics class I never took, for the trip to Oregon, for every time I said, "whatever you want," when I actually had a preference but was too afraid to be inconvenient, for the walls I'd built and the people I'd locked out, for the life I'd lived at arm's length from everything that mattered. And I cried because I finally understood that nobody had asked me to do this. This wasn't noble sacrifice. This was cowardice dressed up as virtue. I was so afraid of being a burden, of being too much, of needing things, that I made myself into nothing, and I'd called it love. 17 minutes. The lesson. It's been 11 years since that Thanksgiving. I'm still learning how to exist in the world as an actual person instead of a function. Here's what I wish I'd understood when I was young. Being needed is not the same thing as being loved. And making yourself smaller doesn't make other people bigger. It just makes everyone lonelier. You cannot love people well from a distance. You cannot build real relationships while hiding. And you cannot disappear for decades and expect anyone to come looking for you, because eventually they'll accept the version of you that you keep showing them, which is no version at all. I talk to Susan now. We're not together, and we won't be. But we're honest in a way we never were when we were married. She told me she used to lie awake, wondering if she'd done something wrong, if she'd somehow made me feel like I couldn't be myself with her. She hadn't. I'd done that all on my own. I see my daughters more now. It's awkward sometimes. They don't quite know what to do with me now that I'm trying to actually be present, but we're learning. I tell them things I remember, I ask them questions, and actually listen to the answers. Last month, Rachel showed me pictures from a trip she took, and I looked at every single one and asked her about them. She cried. She said it was the first time in her life I'd ever really seemed interested in her world. I'm taking a pottery class now, terrible at it. My bowls look like something a drunk person would make in the dark, but I'm there every Thursday evening, covered in clay, trying. I joined a men's group at the community center. We mostly just sit around and talk about nothing important, sports, the weather, whose knees hurt. But sometimes someone says something real and the whole room changes. Last week, a guy named Frank talked about how he'd spent his marriage being afraid to disappoint his wife and how the fear of disappointing her ended up being exactly what destroyed them. Everyone nodded. We all knew that story. We'd all lived some version of it. This is what I'm learning. You teach people how to love you by showing them who you are. And if you never show them, they end up loving a ghost, an idea, a placeholder where a person should be. It's okay to need things. It's okay to want things. It's okay to take up space in your own life. The people who actually love you want you there, all of you, not just the useful parts, not just the parts that serve them. They want the messy, inconvenient, fully human version of you who has preferences and feelings and needs. I'm 79 now. I can feel time running out in my bones. Some mornings I wake up and I'm surprised I'm still here, and the thing that haunts me isn't what I did wrong. It's what I didn't do at all. The conversations I didn't have, the trips I didn't take, the times I didn't reach out, didn't ask, didn't try, the life I was so busy being responsible for that I forgot to actually live it. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself, if you're the person who always says yes, who never complains, who makes yourself small so everyone else can be comfortable, I need you to hear this. Stop. Please, stop. Your children don't need you to be perfect. Your partner doesn't need you to be selfless. Your friends don't need you to be easy. What they need is you, the real you, the version that has opinions and desires and fears and dreams, the version that's brave enough to be inconvenient sometimes, the version that shows up fully instead of standing at the edges of your own life, watching it happen to someone else. I can't get those years back. I can't undo the distance I created. I can't give my daughters the father who was actually there, or give Susan the husband who let himself be known. All I can do is live differently now in whatever time I have left. But you, if you're younger than I am, if you still have time, you can choose differently. You can decide right now that your presence matters, that your feelings matter, that you matter, not just as someone who serves others, but as a whole person with a whole life that deserves to be fully lived. Don't wait until everyone's gone to start showing up. Don't wait until you're alone at a kitchen table on Thanksgiving to realize you've erased yourself. Don't wait until you're 79 to learn how to take a pottery class. Be here, now, while there's still someone to be here for, while there's still a life to be lived instead of just managed. Because here's the truth that took me 8 decades to understand. The people you love would rather have you flawed and needing and imperfect and present than spend a lifetime living with your ghost. The weight of invisible hours crushes slowly. You don't feel it happening until one day you look around and realize you've disappeared, and nobody noticed because you trained them not to look. Don't do what I did. Don't vanish.